Hey, welcome back to The Hook with Chris, where we get behind the scenes and thoughts of business owners and people moving the needle. Who am I? I'm Chris Weitzel, the owner of Chris Seafood. Our brick and mortar location is located at 1300 Seagrave, Unit 4 in Woodstock, Ontario. I bring to the table 20 years of sales experience from the finance industry and more recently the retail sector. My wife and I ran a small fruit and vegetable stand while also attending the Woodstock Farmers Market selling fish and seafood. It was at these venues we've amassed thousands of face-to-face sales. I love sales and food almost as much as I love business. Today, we are joined by a gentleman who is a Canadian content creator with a podcast of 380 plus episodes spanning 7 years. He is the creative director of a digital marketing company called Strobe Creative, where he has been involved in 100 plus websites, an educator for 5 years, and coordinator at Vaynerchuk College, where he's a professor of business entrepreneurship and management program, teaching digital marketing and website design. He is a producer and editor of this podcast you are listening to right now. Welcome, Garrett Gaudet, and thank you for taking the time somehow to spend some time with me today.
Thanks for having me on the pod, Chris.
Right on. Well, I got to start with the podcast. EDM Weekly. 7 years. I think last I checked, it was 380 episodes. Was it bang on 380?
Yeah, there's been 380 episodes recorded, produced over 10 years.
10 years?
10 years, yeah. 2013 started.
Oh my gosh. And the number that I seen online was 500,000 plus downloads?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
That's crazy. Now, I got to ask, what inspired you to start the EDM podcast?
I started the podcast because I didn't see any representation for the music that I liked, especially locally in Oxford County or Woodstock. So I was really getting into podcasts at the time, and podcasts weren't what they are now as this mega medium that kind of everybody has one now.
Yeah.
So the podcast was this platform to share the music I liked with others, and there was no real plan behind the podcast. It was just to try it out, see how it would go, and it went well.
It did, absolutely. Yeah. So you said that, so you had to have gone through a few iterations, like starting out, I mean, you're right, podcasts, just starting out. And I'm going to get into the social media company as well, but sure. When you talk about, you started out with a podcast, and I seen going through a lot of your, I seen Ever After Music Festival, Neverland. Was that part of your whole strategy, was to get live things involved? Because it looks awesome.
Yeah, no, I've had a lot of great opportunities because of the podcast, but that was never the intention. I started with just a MacBook and no microphone.
Right.
So the first, I would say, dozen episodes are pretty rough. They're still online if you want to take a listen of the evolution of my podcasting career. But yeah, no, it wasn't the idea to, meet some of my favorite artists, interview them, or be invited into these music festivals or behind the stage, backstage kind of things. That just kind of happened organically. As my audience grew, I had more credibility and more opportunities were available to me because of the audience that I did grow with the podcast. So at a certain point, I think 4 or 5 years in, that's the point when I started to reach out to these music festivals and started networking within the industry. So I was able to go over to the Netherlands to a State of Trance festival in Utrecht, and I was able to interview artists like Marlo, Vinny Vici, Orjan Nielsen, who I still kind of keep in contact with today. Mm-hmm. And through that, I've just been able to have PR teams send me emails of promotions and music that hasn't been released yet. Yeah. So there's been a lot of perks to the gig. Music festivals, of course, covering those as like a media partner, media accreditation with that. So I've been able to make what I like work and just have fun with it. Cause it's amazing. Yeah.
It's cool to see the evolution. I've started out a couple early ones went midstream, and then so it was nice to see that. So what kind of advice would you give somebody who has a passion for something and knows that podcasts are probably, I mean, there's people that say we started 1-2 months ago. I don't believe in ever too late. What kind of advice would you give to somebody just starting out and wanting to follow their passion?
Definitely pick something you're passionate about. I think listening to someone who's really excited about what they like and what makes them excited about it, and just hearing people be enthusiastic definitely makes it easier for people to listen to what you're creating, especially if we're talking about podcasting as a medium. Listen to podcasts. I think that's really important. If you want to start a podcast, you need to listen to the podcast content to kind of understand of what you're making and what audiences kind of expect when listening to a podcast. Think about the structure, think about the frequency, think about how much you want to commit to it. If it's the frequency of weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, as a season kind of format, that's something else you want to think about too. If you want to see this as like a revenue opportunity, I wouldn't get started in podcasting because of that, because I never think it translates organically. And
not sustainable.
No, because your motivations are more money versus the art of creating or the actual process of creating. I know that's what I've really enjoyed doing over 300 episodes, is just seeing how I can make it better or where I can improve on it. So I think if you really work on the craft of podcasting itself, I would say start with that. Start with a format, what you want to talk about, kind of think about what kind of episodes you want to create. That would be a really great place to start. There's lots of free podcasting platforms nowadays. Spotify for podcasters used to be called Anchor.fm is a really great resource. It's free to host your podcast there. It goes right up to Spotify. There's music you can use, and there's distribution to everywhere. What else?
Spreaker.
Yeah, Spreaker is the one that we use on this podcast, and it's been a really great tool to have that ad share and just have some way to compensate to have some money flowing to the podcast. And of course, you're not going to hit it big right away because that's just not how podcasting works.
We're at 44 cents.
Yeah. I mean, that's a start. That's probably like a drop of your Starbucks today.
Yeah, exactly.
That's maybe just a shot.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's never been easier. I think even if you have like an iPhone or a smartphone, the microphone on your phone is so good. We use it for recording videos as the onboard microphone, so you don't need much to get started. If anything, this is the easiest, most accessible platform to start creating on, is podcasts.
That's right.
Yeah.
So how do you balance the creative aspects of running a podcast with the strategic demands of managing the social media company Strobe Creative?
How? Great. I think that's always changing. I don't think it's ever the same day, the same week, the same month kind of thing. So it's so fluid in the way of how work comes, because a lot of time with the social media business itself or the Strobe Creative business itself, it's project based. So I do have clients that I always work with, but most of the time it is client based and project based. So it's kind of seeing what my capacities are. And I admittedly am not a great judge of how much capacity I have, given my current schedule and
I don't know how you do it.
I don't leave the house. So to get me here today is like a big deal.
And
it's a big booking. But yeah, it's I think especially when talking about content creation, I have to be really creatively inspired to do something like that. I think just looking at my social media, it's definitely only posting when I feel like I'm in the right mindset or right mental capacity to kind of start to push things out. With things like the podcasts, the EDM Weekly Podcast, it's pretty easy. It's not such a mental load compared to the Garrett Gaudet podcast that I have, that I also produce, because the EDM Weekly Podcast is so music-based that I just have to find the music I like, music that I love, or music that's been sent to me, and then create a 30-minute DJ mix with the music. So I did an episode every week for 5 years with the podcast, EDM Weekly. So that was really easy to do. Easy, or just really routine, I should say. It wasn't easy because 5 years is such a long time to kind of do something every week. Yeah. But with my own podcast, I think that's a little more difficult just because that's kind of the side project that if there's something on my mind or something I want to talk about, then that's where it goes. And that's where I've been experimenting with podcasting. And the more I'm working on podcasts like this podcast, it allows me just to see what can be done with this medium too.
Nice. You mentioned getting into the right state of mind, and do you ever, like, a flow state is what I kind of refer to, getting in that state of mind where it's actually devoting 2 to 4 hours, notifications off on the phone, no disruptions. That's what I find I need, and that's studying like a writer like, for me, Tim Denning is a guy I just got done doing a masterclass with. And the no distractions for me, I would say recommend for anybody looking to get into that state of mind. But for you with music, you just got to press play, find some inspiration, listen to a song.
Yeah, I think doing a music-based podcast is really easy just because a lot of my inspiration comes from music.
Right.
If I just need a pick-me-up or I start my day with music, I listen to over 50,000 minutes of music on Spotify the last couple of years. So it's never quiet in my office, in my house. There's always something playing, whether that's music or podcast. So with something like music, it's not so bad just because I can have that. But sometimes that's getting out of the house or traveling. I think for me, travel is a nice way to balance this creativity out. Because definitely the way I work is this kind of hyperfocus where I can just tackle something for hours at a time and just get it done. I might leave it a little later than I want to, but it usually gets done. But that's just my workflow. It's just if I start on something, I have to start and finish it, whether it's a podcast, a video edit, or something like that. That's just my process.
Nice.
It's always changing.
So you said hyperfocus.
Yeah.
Life in hyperfocus.
Yeah.
So I was going to get to this. This is your newest project that I think I checked 3 episodes in.
Yeah. So that's, it's a podcast episode that I did for the Garrett Gaudet podcast. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Tell me, like, I watched episode 3 with your best friend, Jen.
Yep.
And it's like, tell me about what inspired you to, I might not be something that you've actually talked about a lot on podcasts. No, it hasn't. But it is, I think it would really help a lot of people out there. And it could be especially because it seems to be, you even refer to it as maybe the thing right now that a lot of people are, it comes down to a diagnosis you did about, I guess, 1.5 years ago.
Yeah.
Ballpark.
Something like that.
But tell me about life in hyperfocus. What actually made you, what made you seek a diagnosis? And then we can get into like why you decide at that time to do a podcast, but what made you seek a diagnosis?
Yeah. So I think it was during lockdown. I think that it's always was something that was kind of within that I never really identified what it was. Mm-hmm. So during lockdown, I felt it, because I think everyone's kind of routines in life was disturbed.
Totally disrupted.
To like this severe level where there wasn't much consistency with anybody. Mm-hmm. So I think during that time, I kind of felt something, and that was building. So it was I guess that's winter of 2022. That's when I was like, okay, I'm reaching a point where it feels like a burnout. I burnt out a few times already, just, because I've got a lot going on. So it's not surprising that I have. So around that time, it was kind of this critical point where it's like, okay, I need to get this sorted out. And that's where over that time is like trying to navigate and figure out what that was. I'm not someone who's really looked into stuff like that before. So I would say, I was thinking this is looking like ADHD. So I looked into that, and I went to my GP, and also went private just because I didn't know where to start with something like that either. So that's when I got diagnosed with ADHD. I guess that's almost 2 years ago now. So I decided to do a podcast episode about it because I didn't identify with it or start to understand it because I didn't know what it was or understand what ADHD is. So it was a long time of not knowing what it was. As a millennial, I think a lot of us just kind of saw these stereotypical generalization portrayals of ADHD or someone that I didn't identify with either. So that's where on the podcast I sat down with my friend Jen, who also had the same experience of, we kind of got diagnosed around the same time. It's something we've been best friends for years, but neither of us thought about something like that. Right. We both display our traits very differently. Like I said, I'm very much more hyper-focused, and she's not. She's the type that kind of isn't. Her words, not mine. But I started to talk about it because it's something that I want to just explore and have an open, honest conversation about something that I would have wanted to hear going through a process like that, because it completely changed my life, where it's now understanding myself better. I've completely changed my businesses to kind of be more towards my skill set instead of trying to make everything happen. I've just kind of stopped that, and my business is so much better because of the changes I've made. I feel better, and the podcast was this nice little outlet and expression of what I was feeling, and something that was a really big part of my life that I hadn't shared online until that point too. So that was over the last couple of years, and so I thought it was important to talk about it and just make sense of what was going on. Right. And I think now, kind of looking from the outside in, it's like, that makes sense. So it was a good episode that I think everyone should check out. It's one of the episodes I'm most proud of because, again, like I said, with the Garrett Gaudet podcast, it's been this platform and space for me to kind of experiment with different things like that, because outside of dance music content, marketing, business, I hadn't talked about anything like that. So that was a real big step to even start to talk about something like that. And it was really this nice expressive way to, deal with something that I'm a lot more comfortable talking about now.
So it made me actually do some kind of digging to get prepared for this. Yeah. And you're in great company. I've looked at the list. Justin Timberlake, 6-time NBA champ Michael Jordan, Jamie Oliver. I'm going through the list and I see him. He's one of my heroes, just because he's one of the people that I seen starting out when I was starting to cook. I watched him a ton, and he praises healthy nutrition for helping him manage his symptoms. And they all kind of refer to their ADHD as a superpower. I know that's thrown around a lot. And you said you kind of contoured your businesses to what you're really good at. So what would you say, what do you feel is your superpower that you're able to channel now that you've put some time, effort, talked about it? What's your superpower, Garrett?
I would say just the dedication, or really honing in on what I like to do and what I'm passionate about. I don't think I get nearly 200 or 300 episodes of a podcast if I just really don't concentrate on something like that. Just the ability to get things done under time crunch, because like I said, I definitely leave things late, or as late as I can without getting in trouble about that. But it's kind of balancing my life to make sure that it's organized. So that's you've seen my planner and agenda that I have on me at all times, and that's making sure that I don't forget about anything. Because if I don't write it down or don't consciously give it some thought, then it's gone.
Right.
Like coming for the podcast today, I packed everything in the car and forgot my phone on the counter. But I didn't drive away just yet, but it's just little things like that where it pops up. It's like, okay, just grab it and go, kind of thing. So it pops up when it does. So it was definitely, there's the, the superpowerness of it too, but there's also a reason why I had to sort it out too. So it's kind of this balancing act.
Nice. Yeah. So talking about things that you like, I'm going through your socials. I see F1 Enthusiast. Yeah. This one took me by surprise when you said that you went away probably a few months ago. Yeah. How'd you get into F1? I gotta ask.
How did I get into F1? I think that's a lot of people have been asking themselves that over the last couple of years, because I think I watched my first F1 race, I think 2017. I was over in the Netherlands, and Max Verstappen, who's now the best driver in Formula One right now, won a race in Mexico. Okay. And so it's always kind of been on my radar, but I think a couple of my friends have gotten into it, and then I have to say Drive Survive was a big part of that, the Netflix series Drive Survive, as it really showed the sport in this new light, because I've never been, until I got a car, I never would have considered myself as a car person, car guy, just because I've never, that's not something I've never been interested in, but there's so much to the sport. Mm-hmm. It's such a team sport, from the engineering of it to building the car to the strategy on the track, tire management, the drivers itself. There's so much that goes into it, the business side of it, the marketing, the advertising. There's a lot to love about F1, and that's a few reasons why I do. There's so much competition. I'm the type of person who likes sports where there's not dozens and dozens of games, matches, or races per year. So there's 24 races a year. It's nice. Every weekend I got something to look forward to. There's free practice, qualifying, and then the actual race day on the Sunday. So it's always something on my calendar. I had a chance to go to the Formula One Grand Prix in Montreal last summer. Yeah. And that was this spontaneous thing. And I loved it before, but I have so much more appreciation being an event like that, just because you get the atmosphere of the crowd. They're so passionate. There's so many passionate fans, and just being there and hearing the cars and seeing how fast they are. Because you can say 325 kilometers an hour or 345 kilometers an hour is fast, but when you're there in person, you can blink and miss a Ferrari going by you. So as you'd expect, but it's something that I never thought I'd get into, but I'm such an obsessive fan. It's all over my For You page, and there's such a community about it too, because anytime I'm on TikTok, I usually get F1 videos pushed out to me too. Right. So there's a lot wider audience that there is now. I would say there's a lot younger audience, a lot more of a female audience too, and it's just it's this really great sport that I've really learned to love.
Nice. And so you touched on shorter seasons, and that's be your love for Ajax Amsterdam.
Ajax, yeah.
Ajax Amsterdam.
Ajax, yeah. Ajax. It's a Dutch way of pronouncing it, but yeah. Right. Yeah, I think I've been an Ajax fan for probably 6-7 years now. Yeah. I didn't play soccer growing up. Mm-hmm. I was very much hockey and baseball, played competitive baseball, AAA growing up, so soccer was never, again, on my radar, but I started playing soccer in school. I just found some team that I learned to love, and Ajax has been my team, and I try to watch all their games, so every weekend, as I tell you, I watch my football game or my soccer game and watch Ajax, and again, it's 34 games a year, every weekend, something to look forward to. I like the Dutch style of play. Ajax is a team that's this historic, most successful team in the Netherlands. Okay. Not recently, unfortunately, but there's been some tough times. But yeah, I had a chance to go to the Johan Cruyff Arena in December, and I surprised my dad with some tickets.
Yeah, that was awesome. I've seen the pics.
Yeah.
That must have made him so...
Oh, yeah, because he's a hardcore hockey guy.
Right.
If I just need his attention or I need to entertain him, I just put a hockey game on the TV.
Right.
Does the job. But yeah, he's opened himself up to soccer and football, and he's watched games with me, and I've got him hooked a little bit. So
nice.
Going to this big stadium was definitely this bucket list moment that I was able to check off. And that was a really cool experience just to see it in person after watching it for years on TV.
Yeah. So you mentioned the Netherlands a couple times now, and I just checked out one of your posts you just put up. And it's like you going to the Netherlands is a way that you kind of lose yourself. And just by reading it made me think of like you use it kind of as an idea factory.
Yeah.
Where you're able to delve into Garrett. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so my family is Dutch.
Right.
My grandparents were born in what was then the Dutch East Indies, which is now Indonesia. They immigrated over to the Netherlands where my mom was born and her siblings were born. And it's always been, I guess, a big part of my life, this Dutch culture and this Dutch identity of where it just was always around me. But the first time I went was 2001, I think. So I was really young, but it made already such an impact on me at that time. Mm-hmm. So different, and being in this different place with different language, different people, different things and culture was really eye-opening. And I've tried to go every year just to get, like you said, is that reset, this creative recharge of a place that creatively inspires me like no other. Mm-hmm. Walking through the streets of Amsterdam, I can admire the architecture. It's literally the land of dance music, so it's got that element to it too. The infrastructure, the advertising, the marketing, the branding, the way they do retail. There's so much that I take in from the city and the country itself. That I always feel really recharged. I sleep the best when I'm there, probably just because that's where my mind's at. It's just in the country, and just it's always a really good time.
Yeah. So
I've been really fortunate to have something like that, and it hasn't really hit me to the last few times that I've went how impactful that's been. Definitely coming back from the trip in December, it's like, whew. Wow, this was necessary. This is something that I needed, and there's a lot of things that I was able to work out or even formulate, conceptualize that I'm now bringing back to Woodstock with a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of energy, a lot of passion, and just a lot of motivation to really be competitive about some of these ideas, to put them into action. And a lot of the things I've already been able to kind of put into play. It was just playing more DJ gigs, trying different new things with businesses, making sure that my business is on track and going in a direction that I wanted to. And those are all things that a walk through the streets of the canals of Amsterdam, down the Herengracht or something like that is where it's like, oh, okay, this is definitely what I want. But it also is like this big motivator for me too, because if I'm able to take the concepts that I kind of think and dream of over there into action here in Woodstock or Canada, I can then return more often, and just kind of, it's a cycle where
it's a flywheel of
it is. Yeah. So it's amazing.
That's awesome. So you'd mentioned it's time for you to get your businesses on track.
Yeah.
And it's like that's a good segue into Strobe Creative and the world of social media and social media marketing. What was the idea behind starting Strobe Creative?
I would say it's probably one of the more entrepreneurial things I've done. After I finished college, or I guess during college, I'd been freelancing, doing social media for a lot of community organizations, and it was something that I then realized that people are just coming up to me and go, "Oh, you're the social media guy. even before I got started. It's like, okay, so if people are now starting to say, hey, you're the social media guy, maybe I need to lean into this and make it work.
Nice.
It comes easily to me. It's not something that's difficult for me to kind of come up with different concepts or different ways of creating these campaigns or strategies. So it just felt like a natural fit to kind of go from this freelancer of doing these things.
Yep.
So starting my career with Microsoft, I worked in their social media department specifically for Twitter in North America. And that was a good glimpse of like how impactful and how big social media will become, because that was mid 2010s or early 2010s. And now it's hard to imagine what business is without social media nowadays.
Right.
It's become such this core marketing medium that a lot of big businesses, small businesses really rely on and depend on to communicate with customers and potential clients. So with Strobe Creative, it started out with social media, website design. So I've done hundreds of websites now as Strobe Creative, and then a lot of different clients when it comes to social media strategy, from junior A hockey teams to large corporations to government to small business. They've kind of done a little bit of everything, like this great business, Chris Seafood in Woodstock. Go follow them on social media, Facebook. We need help on TikTok, so please go follow us there.
Oh, TikTok. I mean, I don't know.
It's something that I really enjoy. I definitely love the content side of things.
Yeah. And
that's where we've had a lot of success this past year working on that. And it's stuff that really keeps me interested. And it's always changing with algorithms, platforms, going from this long form strategy to the short form content strategy. It's always changing, keeps me sharp and on top of my game, because if I'm not using these platforms or even searching out that things are changing, I'm not doing my job effectively. So doing it for work, teaching in a classroom to college students, that definitely keeps me sharp, keeps me on top of my game. And it's better results for clients because I know what's happening on TikTok. I know what's happening on Instagram. So they can adapt, or I can adapt for them so they can take advantage of those things.
Nice. Well, the enthusiasm comes through when we get to work with each other. And, but you referenced 2010 about, and I actually wrote down, a Gary Vaynerchuk, a Gary V quote from 2006. Wow. So this is him making the prediction about social media way back then. And quote, "Social media is going to win because it's human behavior. The reason we wear a hat or t-shirt is to communicate to others. Buy a fancy car to communicate to others. Every photo you've ever posted on social is subconsciously something you are trying to say. Position yourself front at worst, or communicate your truth at best." So this is going back to 2006. Yeah. And I think it's fairly safe to say that, Gary was right. And so going for the growth on Strobe Creative, where have you seen the most potential to grow? You mentioned short form, long form. This is kind of getting into the nitty gritty now.
Yep.
But how has long form kind of now transferred to short form? Is short form now a leaping to the long form, which is going to create more interested viewers?
Yeah, I would say on the social media side, when it comes to strategy, it's different for everybody. But my focus as someone in strategy and working with business owners is that the priority will be working on developing short form content. We see a lot of platforms like TikTok become this massive, massive influential platform that it is in social media. Instagram has Reels, Facebook has Reels. There's so many different platforms. YouTube has Shorts now that are adapting to this short form format, and people love it. People spend endless hours of scrolling on their For You pages, Reels, and just get lost in short form content. And for myself as a consumer, I don't really care who I'm watching short form videos from. Compared to watching a long form video, it feels more like a commitment. So myself as a consumer, I'll watch short form content from just random people on TikTok or Instagram, but I'm not doing that on YouTube.
Right.
Because it kind of feels I don't know what I'm getting into. But with the short form content, it's getting that message across right away. It's an effective way to communicate with customers, clients, showcase your brand, your personality. It's done a lot in just the whole social media space that we've seen a lot of influence onto other platforms. So we haven't really gone away from long form content. Long form content still serves a purpose, but each business has to identify what that purpose is, because it might not make sense to invest in long form content if you don't have this end goal or there's strategy behind this long form content, because it takes a long time to produce this. We do the podcast. We've done this for like a month now, and it's not for everyone's business strategies. It's not. We've had in-depth conversations about how this fits into your content strategy and how this fits into your big picture, so it makes sense. But we've seen so much more reach and views just on the short form content because it is a lot easier to produce. You can conceptualize it, go from, if you want to storyboard it, to creating the idea for the piece of content, to the edit, to posting in maybe an hour if you wanted to. If you really want to be quick about it and churn it out, you could do that. No one's really spending a lot of time looking at stuff, especially stuff like static photos. I don't think they're as valuable as something like a video. If you have an opportunity to take a video of something instead of a photo, a lot more people are going to see it. It's a lot more interesting. Yeah. It's not so two-dimensional in that way. Kind of get to see more details, texture, and get more creative with it. I think a lot of businesses have kind of stayed in this way of creating content for the last 10 years of what worked on Facebook in the early days, and they're still doing it. And they might have some success with that, but you're not consistently growing a sustained audience with you. Because that same audience is not going to be the future of your business, probably. So with the short form content, it's something that can just have this wider reach. We are in the age of algorithms and For You pages and platforms kind of deciding what we see, what we will then try to create and aspire to, and give creators an idea of what they should be doing too. And I truly believe that it's short form content. It's the way forward for a lot of businesses. It's the way forward that I see in the foreseeable future that is the key to growth. The reach, it's there, and people like watching it. I think it's something that is very accessible. Everyone has a smartphone nowadays, so you can really connect with that audience. On the website side of things, it's working on SEO and making sure that they have a good presence online and ensuring that the business that people see on their website is the same that they'll see in store. So making sure that their product or services are effectively demonstrated on their website, and people know what you do, what you offer, and why you're better than the rest, or what makes you unique, kind of thing. So, but it's the same thing with short form content. You can have that element of storytelling and that short snippet video compared to this long-winded or this really long form video. So it's really just an easier way to share your story. And I think that's where a lot of businesses, brands are taking advantage of that.
And there's also the kind of the statement to be made about the amount of time to be involved in the game before you start to see results. I mean, you had a podcast for 10 years. And I mean, nothing happens overnight. Takes that time to develop. I like the thought of I think shorts. That's just catering to people's lack of attention, really. But the fact you can incorporate long-term content, post-edit everything down, you can take 1 hour of content and you can just develop shorts, reels, everything off of that. But again, it's taking the time, having somebody like yourself to have the strategy behind it, not just thinking you're just going to start creating short-term content.
Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of businesses just don't have a lot of success with social media. It's not sticking to the plan. It's not.
A lot of them probably don't have a plan.
That's the thing too. It's like you kind of start this content journey, or you keep hearing from other business owners or people you know, hey, you got to get on social media, you got to start posting.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's great. But if there's no direction to it or guidance or, like you said, strategy, it's not an effective way to really market your business, because it's going to show that you don't know what you're doing, or it's not going to be this kind of content that will make your business this new thing in town, or this business that really knows how to connect with their audience or their customers. Because you can have this great relationship with your customers, but when you bring it to social media, it's entirely different. Because people want different things, and if you don't really understand your customers, you're not going to produce the most effective content. And it definitely takes some time, some commitment to make sure that you're sticking with it, because social media is definitely a long game. And I think growing an audience sustainably is the way to do it, where you want to kind of grow it over time. I definitely did that with my podcast. There's no way I would have grown quickly with the first few episodes, but it was then after dozen or so, maybe 100 episodes, and it really started to keep growing and keep getting better. And I think that's because of the consistency of my uploads. The production value kept increasing. I kept getting better at it because it's just practice.
Putting in the reps.
Yeah, absolutely. And you'll start seeing the results the more you get comfortable with creating content, whatever platform that is. As long as you are enjoying having fun with it, I think that's a really easy way just to get started with it.
Just to enjoy it.
I think people will appreciate that you're just being yourself. And that's kind of the cliche with social media, is just being authentic. But the most successful brands, creators, and business owners are the most authentic. Like, it's not just playing it up for the camera, it's what you see in store. And I think that's what we've done so well with your socials, is that we're simulating exactly what customers are going to see when they go to Chris Seafood. What you see on video is the guy who you're going to get in store and experience. You're going to get those dad jokes, but you're also going to get like some really great expert advice on seafood and how you're sourcing your oysters and salmon, and what I can do with it, how I should cook it up, what I should do with this piece of fish that I'm just really uninspired with. But that's where, if you can translate that from social media to the in-store experience with this kind of omni-channel strategy, it's going to be very good for your business.
What did the fishmonger say to the magician?
I don't know.
Pick a cod, any cod.
See, I control the edit, and I don't know if that's going in. We'll see.
You made me think when you were talking about content there. I'm a big fan, and I mean, anybody that watches any content right now has probably seen Alex and Layla Hormozi, just because of the amount of time and money that they are putting into developing their social media program. But to go back to the time, nobody had seen Alex ever unless you were really in the gym space, and that's where he was catering to when he had a gym, and he was growing his brand in the gym space, and then later on in the supplement space, and then had a third company come in to do help out with the gym's technology front for CRM systems. But what I'm getting at is that he did 3 episodes a week for 4 years straight, and the numbers were just like, they just like, there was no growth really until 4.5 years in, and then things just hockey sticked for him. So there is no such thing as an overnight success when it comes to social. I truly believe. Even Mr. Beast, everybody knows Mr. Beast, but that guy's been studying with him and his close group of friends since they were, I think, 12 or 13, when they started just getting together and developing strategies, coming up with how to do the thumbnails. I mean, we just watched an episode each of Diary of a CEO, and they're doing 100 thumbnails per episode on A/B testing, 30 of them each episode. I mean, the sky's the limit on what you want to spend, but the bottom line is the time is the commitment. But another Gary V quote here about talking about market and brand is, The quote goes, "Sales is what you do when you don't know how to market or brand." And that one hit hard. I mean, you could be the best salesman out there, I think, but it's only going to take you so far until you start to take the time, develop a strategy, integrate SEO. You can look at all the different things for outbound now. Newsletters are the buzzword around here now, like out in trying to get the word out. But that is creating the market and the brand, taking the time though. So, and this is the last Gary quote I'm going to say.
We've maxed out, have we?
I wrote down 3 that I wanted to integrate here. Actually, is another one. Oh. But the one is that I think the only thing that matters in the world is who's best at garnering attention. The end. And he stops right there. And that's all we're trying to do by having a podcast, by trying to get as many eyeballs as possible on short form, which then can translate to getting into long form. And that's going to deepen those relationships with our customers. That's where I feel that they're integrating the short form and the long form. But right now I find that we're in our business that to double your business, any business right now that is trying to at least double, which is the goal of most, there's an inability to delegate due to nobody can do it better mentality. So nobody can do it better. So I think a lot of small businesses don't hire enough during their times of growth. Like, I know I'm just relating to how it felt with me, is I knew social marketing was the way to go for me. I did have that nobody can do it better, which stymied, I believe, my growth in the store until I started to hiring every couple months somebody new. And that is how it came in for you. I was just listening to Gary on, I can't do it all, so I hired you to take care of what you are good at. And organic growth and social media marketing being the key, me not having the time to do what I knew I needed to be done, enter Garrett into my business. And that was 6-7 months ago.
Yeah, started the summer last year.
Right. But I'm just really trying to get through to small businesses out there that you don't have the time to do what I think you probably need in your business right now, and to delegate to get that growth in your business.
Yeah, and to add on to that, as much as it is this long-term strategy and long-term play, I think even working together in your business, even these short-term results have been people coming up to you and talking about the videos and talking about your content and social media. So as much as it is building for the future, you're seeing the instant feedback on that right away. And that was after the first few videos that we did, that even people were coming in to buy the product that we did a video on. Yeah. And it's such a really great relationship that you've developed with your customers. And I think your customers can also see that too, that you're investing in them by creating better relationships with them, whether that's telling them about sales or only saying something on social media and you selling out of something just purely because of that. So
the freezer sale
that was like a month ago.
Yeah.
So as much as it is this long-term play, you can see these quick ROI just if 1 or 2 messages really resonate with people, or if you do a really good job. So it doesn't have to be this big endeavor to it. Right. As long as you can communicate effectively in a video, I think you'll still produce some really great content.
It's the thing I love about social media is there is an immediate feedback loop. It's not like where you're putting $1,000 in-print ad in a newspaper and you're just hoping people subscribe to that newspaper, didn't use it as fire starter. And that's where I really have noticed the difference for our business alone. Like, we do so many different recipes. I'll just open up the cookbook, pick a recipe, practice it a couple times, and it's nice to have somebody walk in the door and say, I seen that recipe, I want to try it. Yep. That's an immediate feedback loop that I think any small business would love to have, as opposed to throwing out bigger dollar amounts into any type of, I'm going to call it legacy or dinosaur media. I don't know. That's what's really appealed to me on the, having you around to keep me on the straight and narrow. Because it's so easy for a business owner to think, and like you said, hear from another buddy that this is going to work. This is what I've done. But to put the blinders on, know that it's going to take some time and it's going to take money as well, because you don't work for free.
No. But like you said, you could put that money or ad spend into advertising, or you could put that into content and social media production too. Right. Which I think you're growing your brand, you're working on investing in your brand. There's a lot to be said that's a more effective use of those funds. Yeah. Because advertising isn't sustainable. Right. You get the spikes because of the ads and the traffic of whatever that looks like for a business, but the growth and the relationships that you create with customers online, that can't be taken away from you. No. That's earned customers and earned audience too.
And the other thing I wanted to talk is that it's the organic growth we're talking about. When I just want people to be clear on when we're talking about ads, is that we rarely pay for an ad on any of the platforms. We did a few times to get a bigger push during a sale or something, but we're talking about paying Garrett to help create the ad, and then using the organic growth that people have through their followers to generate the buzz. It's not paying for the ad necessarily. Like, a lot of this is available to people very cheaply. It is the most effective way to get your message out there to people. So that's where I think it's important to just differentiate between paying for ads, is that it's not all just paying the platform to boost your ad. It's creating an ad that you think is going to be effective in conveying what you're trying to your followers, and getting the organic growth that way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. As a young entrepreneur, what advice would you give to others who wanted to start their own venture? Let's use the digital media space. Sure. What would you be telling to a student who says, Garrett, I want to start X business in the digital media space?
I would say think about what you're adding to the space, because especially if you're a new entry into any industry, mm-hmm. I think you have to add something different or be something different than what's already existing in that space.
Add value.
Because if you're going to compare yourself against someone who's been doing it for a decade, or someone who has a lot of experience, has a large portfolio, you're not going to be comparable. Baseline. Maybe price point would be comparable, but getting started is really being strategic about how you enter, how you start it. Think about different ways you can niche down. Maybe that's specializing in a style of social media. Maybe that's managing or working just with a specific industry, whether that's in retail, food space, sports. These are all things that you could niche down to, just to specialize and make yourself stand apart from the others. Because a lot in the digital marketing space too goes so broad and so general, it doesn't really capture anybody, just because they don't identify with the clients that you're trying to target. Because if you don't know how to target, it kind of disqualifies you from the profession. But it definitely is important to understand what your business is, what value you're providing to customers, how you are going to market yourself, and how you're going to attain credibility with people, because it's definitely something that you need a portfolio with. So it might be working with just anyone you can, just to kind of create that portfolio and understand what that looks like and why you're doing it. And because if you are younger, it's usually a good look. If you are someone working in digital marketing or social media, because you know what's in, you know what's happening, and you have your finger on the pulse, if you will, when it comes to social media trends and things like that. We see a lot of great corporate accounts from Duolingo and Ryanair who have done just incredible work online, and that's just because they've let their accounts go to Gen Z and figured out what works, and they're not selling this language learning app. They're really just grabbing as much attention as possible with these ridiculous and crazy pieces of content that I'm obsessed with, because it's so out of the box thinking that no textbook will teach you that. No agency is going to kind of advise you to run a Super Bowl ad with an owl's butt, just as the commercial.
I know. I was going to bring up the Super Bowl commercials, which was just last night. This is we're filming the day after. So talk to me about some of the commercials. You mentioned the Duolingo one. I wish I'd seen it, but
Duolingo is a great case study for anyone. I think if you are trying to get into social media, or if you want to kind of see how an education brand, we're talking education, has grown such a devoted audience of young people and people who aren't even interested in using their service or their brand.
Right.
I'm not a Duolingo customer. I use a different app for learning Dutch, but like I said, I'm obsessed with what kind of content they produce. It's so unhinged. It's so radical. It's so ridiculous that it's not something that anyone's just going to learn. Yeah. So it's this great way to understand what works with people online, because that's the big benefit of having educated, experienced employees that understand how these platforms work. Because if they try to do some of the stuff that they do on TikTok, on Facebook, it's going to fall flat, and people aren't going to get it, but they understand how the culture of TikTok works, and they've really leaned into it to a point where that's become their brand and their marketing identity of just this company that's unhinged, and they will do literally anything. So it's really impressive. Yeah. I think their ad slot was like 5 seconds, so it wasn't long at all. Yeah. But it doesn't need to be difficult. Super Bowl commercials are a lot of high production value with celebrities, and they find this funny bit and just make it something. Yeah. And it's a very, in my opinion, tired, formulaic way of advertising, because the Super Bowl is so built up to, the ads are which are like why people tune in outside the game and the halftime show. But I think a lot of advertising agencies are getting kind of lazy.
That's where Garrett comes in,
because it's getting boring as someone in advertising and marketing, because I truly do love the game. It was a great game last night, but the ads were kind of lacking for me. So there's some years where it's like, banger. Yeah, that's okay too. Good story to it. But there's some big brands that I kind of expect more from. Yeah. It's kind of they've done the same kind of style commercial for the last decade.
Safe.
It's very safe. Yeah. And I think me in advertising and marketing, I like when they don't play it safe. So I do like this bold approach of doing something that nobody else is doing, and being experimental and trying new things. And that's kind of what I really like about Duolingo. And so if you are looking to start like a social media business or start in any industry, just be bold and do things that others aren't doing, because you find a way of standing out, and it becomes this really effective way to make a name for yourself, because you'll be remembered because you're doing that thing that nobody else is doing.
Don't be afraid to fail.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're going to fail your way to success, I believe.
Yeah.
Is there any platforms right now that you think is getting underpriced attention, where you think...
Underpriced attention? Right. I think in the small business world, I think TikTok is still underutilized, right? Where it can still have this growth, and it's really being, I call it the TikTokification of social media, right? Where a lot of social media nowadays is becoming a lot less about the production itself. It's becoming more relaxed, less refined. So it's not about this high curated image anymore, because a lot of consumers just don't identify with that. It's not attainable for a lot of people to have this really perfect lives, because none of us do. And I think social media is kind of reflecting that in a way, where a lot of content creators are seeing this growth in these audiences because they're creating content just being themselves. And there's so many different ways where we can use platforms like TikTok to experiment and do different things. And it's, if you definitely want to connect with a younger audience, TikTok is the way to go. You might have grown your business on Facebook, but you do need to pay attention to what TikTok is doing, because what you're seeing on Facebook or Instagram is what's already happened on TikTok, most likely. I use both platforms because I have to stay in the know of everything. And TikTok is where my attention is most of the time, because I'm seeing the most creative things and pieces of content coming off that platform. But I'm also seeing a lot of small businesses from all around the world have a lot of success on the platform and have made the name for themselves because they are focusing on it and they're doing cool things and just having fun with it. So I think TikTok is still that platform, even though that it's kind of now maturing as a social media platform. It's still really valuable to really audience that's not really being taken care of, in my opinion.
Anyways, should probably wrap it up there. Where can we find you, Garrett?
You can find me on social media at Garrett Gaudet on Instagram, TikTok, why not? Podcasts, Garrett Gaudet Podcast on all podcasting platforms, EDM Weekly, edmweekly.com, garrettgaudet.com, and strobecreative.com for all your website design needs. Awesome.
So I guess to wrap up today, my biggest thing would be is that small business, do not ignore. I jumped headfirst into doing podcasts and creating as much content as possible. That's really what I think that small businesses should do. Don't be afraid to fail. Put the content out there and let the people decide. But I know you're a busy guy. I want to say thank you, Garrett. It was great to get to know you a bit better, and I can't wait for the future on what we keep cranking out.
Stay tuned. It's gonna be fun.
Thanks. So, I'm Chris Weitzel, owner of Chris Seafood. We can be found at our brick and mortar location at 1300 Seagrave, Unit 4 in Woodstock. And remember, we're here to keep your meals hook, line, and simple. Thank you.